Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in.
Hello, my guest today is LA-based Gabriel Ornelas, hospitality industry expert and creator and host of On the Path podcast, a collector of interesting people, purveyor of memorable experiences. Gabriel has spent his career working in hospitality, F&B, entertainment, and lifestyle industries to help build and produce compelling branding experiences through content, media, and partnerships. Hi, Gabriel, and welcome to Curito Connects.
Hey, how are you? So great to be here.
Very good. I'm so happy you're on today. I wanted to give a quick shout out to our mutual friend, Jamila Robinson from episode 66 for being our mutual friend on Instagram, where after I dropped her episode, Gabriel and I connected. So social media is fun like that sometimes.
There's positives.
Well, because
There's positives to
it's
social
fun.
media.
Exactly. Well, and here we are recording an amazing episode to be. So, Gabriel wants to dive into his love for community building and how that has shaped him to become the person he is today and the work he does. So, Gabriel, if I could have you start off by introducing yourself to our audience and lead us into your earliest memories of community, what you felt, and how that has been such a significant part of your DNA, and why you wish to spread more of this value to the hospitality industry.
Sure. No, thank you so much. It's great to connect, and hopefully, as we were discussing earlier, we'll be able to connect IRL over a great meal and a drink, whether it be in Taiwan or somewhere else, around the globe. But yeah, you kind of gave a brief outline, but at its simplest form, I'm a marketer, I'm a storyteller, I'm a brand strategist, and a producer. And so I work very closely with a number of brands, wine and spirits companies, hospitality brands. I've worked with automotive companies, a number of financial services companies as well, all through the lens of really developing unique and exclusive experiences around sort of culinary and beverage. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some incredible boutique hotel brands for multiple years, and really just kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, in learning about the industry, both from a marketing perspective, storytelling, sales perspective, and have kind of bounced around and done a lot of different things to get to the place that I am today. And then I finally got to a place where I said, wow, through working with some of these incredible brands, through being in the industry for almost 12, 13 years, I've just met some of the most incredible individuals globally, not just in the States, like all over the world. And I got to a point end of 2019 where I said, I need to sort of record this. I need to bring this together and again create community. And I didn't know I was going to be doing this leading into obviously a global pandemic where we were all going to kind of be shut down in our homes. But I was fortunate enough to have the idea that many people have had, but really leverage all of the incredible relationships that I've built over the last 13 years with hoteliers, with restaurateurs, with world-renowned chefs, winemakers, wine and spirits executives and CEOs, and put together a show that really celebrates the diverse ecosystem that composes of food, beverage, and hospitality. And so my brand consulting, my sort of strategy work, really works hand in hand with my podcast. Some of the guests have been clients, some of the guests are clients, but it really, I believe, keeps me really at the cutting edge what's happening in the industry. And I'm sure you feel this way, Jenn. Like, as a host of a podcast, we get the most out of this. We get to speak to cool people. We get to learn from them. We get to ask questions that hopefully develop interesting answers, but we also are providing some value to our listeners as well, hopefully. As I always say, my goal for every episode I do with On the Pass is for there to be a unique and interesting takeaway for the listener, for them to at least go, that's interesting, that made me think, or I want to implement that into my life, or I want to go to that place. That sounds incredible. So long-winded answer for you, but I I grew up with a family. My father's family is Mexican. My mother's family is Italian. Both cultures really valued family. Both cultures really valued, like many cultures, being in the kitchen, around food, around celebrations. Almost, I would say, every day was a celebration because there was always something happening. There was always something going on. And my parents were both in the service industry. My mother worked at a hospital. My father was a public servant. And I said in an article recently that I think, their only son was, is well positioned to be in the service business as well, because I saw my parents selflessly give to so many people. In fact, I was just talking with a friend of mine the other day that I shared my parents with so many people growing up. I'm happy I was able to do that. I would say I wasn't wanting for anything. My parents gave me all the love, all the affection, but we did. My sister and I shared them with so many people. They were always, the nature of their jobs were helping a friend, helping a client. My father, being a police officer, was helping everyone he could, whether it was in our neighborhood or outside of the neighborhood. And he was always the person that people called. So I saw themselves selflessly give. And then on top of that, on the weekends when they weren't working, host dinners and host people. And my mother would cook for 6-7 hours, getting ready and be exhausted on her feet, but loved just the idea, even though it sent her in bed for probably 2 days afterwards, of just making people happy and serving them and offering an experience that hopefully they enjoy and they talk about. And I think that's what hospitality is all about. I had a guest, which I recently re-released the episode. His name was Shep Gordon. It was episode 25. I just re-released it as episode 65, but he's coined as the individual who created the celebrity chef. So he managed Emeril Lagasse and Wolfgang Puck and helped put together the Food Network and essentially created, the platform, the vehicle. He was the catalyst for the celebrity chef as we know it today, of really helping them give the platform. But he said something that was really interesting. He said, we often have to remind ourselves that we're simply in the business of making people happy. And so that's kind of what I think about all the time, whether I'm servicing clients or I'm working and building community on my podcast, or I'm hosting dinners. I'm always trying to build community. I'm always trying to bring people together and again, be that catalyst, be that conduit for an exchange of ideas and for people to develop new relationships from. And so that's why, I always say, it's on my Instagram, which you read it, but I say, I don't collect anything, but I collect interesting people in my life. And I say, if you're going to collect anything, collect people, experiences, and memorable moments. And those are the things that you can really kind of take with you as you move through the world.
It's very true. Thank you for that intro. I do want to kind of take you further back. I want to ask you at what point in the growing up on these weekend gatherings with, your parents and the community, that you started to step in and help your mom with the cooking? And then at what point growing up did you decide, I don't know what you studied in school, but like, how did you go about figuring out how you wanted to start off your career, like that you chose marketing? Is that
Hmm.
what you studied, like journalism,
Hmm.
or did you want to be a chef? If you could, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there wasn't an option not to help my mother in the kitchen, and in fact, which I'm very happy that I did that. I really enjoyed learning from her in the kitchen, and I really value that time that we had together. We don't we I only live about an hour to an hour and a half from them, so I'm not far, but it's different. I don't see them. I don't see them every week. They travel, I travel a lot, but I oftentimes think back to those moments of making pastries, or making breakfast with my mother, and there, it's I'm very fond of those memories, and it's just something that I'll have with me for the rest of my life. My father worked like crazy when I was younger, and so I spent a lot of time with my mom, and spent a lot of she worked full time, but when we got out of school, it was always she's one of those, I think, that last generation of women that are just, I don't know how she did everything. It's like, I don't know how you work full time, you take care of the kids, you're cooking, you're cleaning, no help. I just I idolize my mom for that reason, because I have no idea how she did it all. But she did it with
Did you ever
a smile on her face.
did you
We've joked about it and we've talked about it a lot.
Okay, yeah.
But we have, it's funny. I think I've gotten to a place where I'm finally asking my parents more questions about
Mm,
who they are, and you have this idea of who mom and dad are, and they show up in your life in a specific way, but we all have to remember they were they have hopes, they have dreams, they were single, at one point, they weren't married, they had a whole life before us as well, and they oftentimes made certain sacrifices in order
mhm.
to have children, and so
Yep.
some of those conversations have been had, but I'm actually going through a bit of a fun project of recording my father, as well, not to put out into the world, but because, again, I have all the equipment, I have all the ability to do it. But my father was in law was a police officer for over 40 years, and worked in El Salvador, worked in Guatemala, worked in Mexico, with Scotland Yard in the UK, and just has
Wow.
such a depth of experience, really, into a world that most of us only see in movies, and
Yes.
most of us don't want to necessarily know about, but it's
Yeah.
wildly fascinating, and it's obviously shaped him to the individual that he was. But yeah, getting back to that kind of like early days, I loved being with my mom. I loved serving people. I really got a lot of joy from that, and that's why I remember when I was in high school, they didn't want me to get a job when I think I was 14 or 15, and they said, "Why don't you
Mhm.
take a year, get get set up?" And I was like, "No, I want to be a barista, because I just love the idea of like helping people start their day."
Mm.
And some people, they're midday, they're afternoon,
Yep. Yep.
they're early evening, and so I worked at Starbucks for about 6 years as a barista, and got to work kind of all through Southern California, and it was so fun to be a part of. I had Eddie Cola, who's the CEO of Groundworks Coffee, which is a 32-year-old organic coffee brand, and they have cafes in Oregon and Southern California. I had him on the podcast, and I said, I felt so cool to be a part of like that second wave coffee in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2004 2005. It was Starbucks really for the most part. There's other brands as well, really kind of set that wave for that, that second wave into that third wave where we're at right now. Although some people would say we're in a fourth wave. But yeah, it was so fun, like being able to affect people's day in a positive way. And I derived a lot of joy from that. And I think you either have that or you don't have that. And for me, serving others is not a burden. It's a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I still enjoy it to this day.
So you had Starbucks, and then during that time, did you go study like at school? And did you finish a degree? Did you go like, okay, well, I love Starbucks, but I should find a 9 to 5, whatever you want to call it?
I went to USC, and I studied at the communications school, and then transferred to the School of Letters, Arts, and Sciences, and had a business minor and an international relations minor, because I was always just I never got to travel when I was younger. My parents didn't have the ability for us to travel. We would go to Mexico, we would go to New York. That's kind of it, because that's where we would go with family. But I had friends especially at high school or USC who come from well-to-do families that are in the south of France each summer, and they're in Greece or they're in Japan, and I was always fascinated by those kids because I've not always, but I feel like they had potentially some more depth than some of my other friends who didn't necessarily. They saw the world in a different way, whether they even appreciated it or not at that time. They had a different experience, and so I always really wanted that. I knew I would always get there, and I think that's also for me what I'm so proud of is in sort of architecting this career that I've had. I've been able to do that and then some. I've been able to travel to so many places, and have been so fortunate. And so it would have been nice to do it as a child, but I'm really happy in how it played out. Now I want my parents to be able to experience some of the things that I've experienced. And so I'm kind of toying with a couple trips where I can get them engaged as well. But yeah, I did that. But honestly, like I got out of college around 2000, right after the recession of 2008, and jobs were not readily available. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to put a lot of this energy and passion into. And I kind of always knew hospitality was a place, but didn't really know how to get my start. And so I started kind of really just knocking down doors and meeting with people and taking them out to lunch with the little to no money that I had. I mean, I was running around Los Angeles and going to New York, taking people to dinner and taking people to lunch, and not really and doing something that I still do to this day, that I would say, I wouldn't say, can you help me with this? I would say, how can I best help you? And I would ask them, and I think some of them would kind of laugh and go, this is like a young kid. What do you mean? How can you help me? But the funny thing was, I enjoy people, and I enjoy connecting with people. And I had built through college and through a number of internships, had built some pretty great relationships already getting out. Individuals who ran agencies, a few CEOs of some brands, a few hospitality executives. And so I leveraged that pool, that collective of individuals, and each person I would meet with, I would say, how can I best help you? What can I help you with? And they're like, thanks for asking that. And they're like, I'm really looking to connect with, boutique hotel. I said, my friend runs this such and such. And I would make that connection. And essentially in the beginning, that wouldn't put any money in my pocket. But what that was I was building social currency. I was building social currency where anytime I called that person, they would pick up the phone. They would pick up the phone because they would go, wow, he was the catalyst for this relationship. Whether something
Yeah.
evolved from it or not, they got some value from it. And so,
Yeah.
it wasn't a what can you do for me type thing, but I was in the spirit of giving, because I said,
Yeah.
I don't I don't have 20 years. I don't have a multimillionaire father or a CEO father who I can sort of leverage their respective network from. But I do know some great people, so let me give so that I can get.
Mm.
And that was like the philosophy, or like early on. And the reality is like, I think there's a book, Give and Get, or something, or
Give and take.
Give and Take. Yes.
Give and take.
Yeah. Something.
Adam Grant.
Yeah. It's Adam Grant's, which I think at the end of the day, the givers win. I think the givers win, but you do get burned a lot along the way. But you just have to,
Mm-hmm.
you become more selective. You become more thoughtful about who you ultimately give to. Um, but I mean, that was really the start of everything, was really just giving, and then going to some of my close connections and saying, I think I can really support you all in your marketing efforts. I think I could support you all in your partnership efforts. And here's sort of some of my ideas.
Mm.
And then, before you knew it, I had a number of boutique hotel clients hiring me. I had wine and spirits clients that I was working with, and till this day, I've never had a formal job. I've always kind of done my own thing. I've been an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
as you may know. Like, the highs are high and the lows are low, but
Mm.
it's it's been so fun, and it's been so rewarding. And I would say, like, it's a different experience to go in house and leverage the power and the influence of a big brand. But there's also something
Yeah.
to be said for someone that's entrepreneurial, nimble, hungry, and can kind of get into any door. There's also a bit of um, it's worked. It's worked for me, really
Yeah.
well. And even with my podcast, we mentioned Jamila uh, earlier. She's more took a traditional route, and has leveraged that in such an incredible way, whereas I've sort of taken a non-traditional route and created a podcast on my own. I don't have a media
Yeah.
company behind me, kind of pushing it, but have really just, through the power of passion, integrity, and just deep interest and love for this industry, and great network,
Mm.
I've been able to really build something interesting. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't an opportunity for individuals like us as much. You had to work for Bon Appetit. You had to work for Forbes Travel
Yeah.
Guide. You had to work for some big media company. And now it's really been the playing field has been leveled in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And if you have the interest, and you have uh, the grit to be able to create something, um, you can be right there with everybody else, as well.
I just got goosebumps because when you were referring to social currency. I just little side story.
Yeah, yeah, please.
I feel like you're like the male version of myself, because for a long time that's what I did.
Yeah.
Like, I would just go out and meet people, and I remember my family be like, "Why are you constantly going off and having coffee with people? And, meeting them for drinks? Like, you spend all like your day just like out and about meeting people."
Mhm.
And they're just kind of like, "Who are all these people you're meeting?" And then 10 years later, I look back and I go, that's my social currency, right?
Yeah.
To your point, exactly. It's like, I've kept in touch with them. I can reach out even if we've only met once or twice,
Mhm.
and I can do that connect that you just referred to. Um, But I wanted to ask you a very important question, which is when you started to offer your community of networks, you said, I can really help you guys with your marketing. I can help you with these different connections. How did you figure out? Because I think this is a question a lot of entrepreneurials have, right? It's like, how did you figure out your system? Like, how were you going to charge people? Because they all started off as your friends, right? So that relationship of like putting a price tag to your services and being okay with like, well, this is how I'm going to charge
Mm.
you. This is what I will deliver. Was that difficult for you to figure out? Were there hard conversations you had
Mhm.
with friends who probably didn't want to really pay you that amount until they saw a result? I feel like those are always like the icky questions that people don't really talk about, but
Mhm.
that's the reality, right? Like that's how you make a living.
Yeah, I think you have to become comfortable in the uncomfortable. If you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to run your own business, if it makes you feel weird asking people for money, um, then you either have to find someone else to work with you to do that, or you have to become comfortable with it. I think getting to the point of the question of how you price things, and then kind of like balancing the relationship, every project is different. So it really depends on the scope of work. It really depends on ultimately what are what are you doing. Are you doing some strategy work that takes place over a couple months? There's a specific way to price that. Are you doing strategy that's tied to some production of some sort, whether it be a podcast, whether it be digital content, whether it be a full-fledged, campaign, or is it really just, diving into the customer profile and diving into sort of some of the data? And it just comes down to ultimately what are you offering, what are you doing, and then for me, I never really did an hourly. I've done things where I've done a day rate where I've actually consulted with people. They wanted me to come in for a day or two. I've done the day rate, and obviously that's gone up over the years. But for the most part, a lot of the early clients, they were monthly retainers because they were tied to a specific scope of work that was strategy oriented, that was about developing the strategy, implementing the strategy, and then it was also tied to partnership development as well. And so, I'll give an example. I had worked with the Faena Hotel in South Beach, Miami. They are now owned by the Accor Group, which is in the Einsmore sort of luxury boutique division of Accor. Um, but I put together a 2-year deal with Mercedes-Benz. And so, they paid me a monthly fee um, for about 6 months. And then, you know, to not to my liking, they stopped paying after the 6 months. But I basically courted Mercedes-Benz, the brand that I did the deal with, for another 3 months, and then I did a 7-figure deal, which I got a sizable percentage of on the back end, which was the contingent compensation. So depending on, again, what you're doing, it could be a monthly fee, it could be a day rate, but it can also be tied to um, some sort of success fee as well, in addition to the actual fees that you're charging for the strategy and some of the implementation. So again, it's difficult to say without really specifics, because every project
Mm-hmm.
is different. But I think, the advice that I would give is, I always tell people, like, find business mentors, like as much as possible, and ask those questions. Understand from a few trusted resources, how do you price things? Um, how do you go about? There's a lot of people who are great openers. There's not many people who are great closers. And that's
Mm.
something that, it's funny. I had a business advisor for many years, and he would say, "You're one of the greatest." And this is when I was like in my early to mid 20s, he'd say, "You're one of the greatest business openers I've ever worked with." But he said, "You don't know how to close the deal." And so it was funny. It really got me. It really got me thinking about, okay, what is that art of the deal? And yes, it's one thing to open something, but then how do you sort of take it from interest and excitement to letter of intent, and okay, money's exchanging hands, let's get married, essentially. And there's a lot of factors. There's timing, there's working with the right individual, it's the right project, there's a lot of different things, but yeah, getting to that close quicker, I learned as well, not rushing the process, but also not lingering and staying in deals that you kind of know aren't going to happen either. I posted something the other day that's been getting quite a bit of chatter on LinkedIn. I've been doing these food for thought type posts, and I said, a quick no is always better than a slow, drawn out maybe. And I kind of reference the fact that people talk a lot about ghosting culture in dating. Well, it's really no different in business.
It's true.
There is a lot of people in business that ghost you. And what I said is, if you're actually, so there's a couple different things. If you're in fear of saying no to someone because you don't want to hurt the relationship, there's that. There's like also indifference. You don't care about the relationship, so obviously that's why you're ghosting. But I think there's less people who are the latter. I think there's this sort of fear of rejection and fear of giving rejection, because especially in a place like, I don't know how it is by you, but in a place like LA or New York or other, I'd say big metropolitan areas where people come to be discovered, people come to do business together, there is this sort of, well, we might be able to work together in the future. I don't want to sour the relationship. But what I would say is, you're actually giving more respect to somebody by saying, and the relationship by saying no. You say, hey, you know what? There's not an opportunity right now, but there might be next quarter. Or you know what? I don't think there is going to be an opportunity for this idea, but why don't you circle back in our next fiscal or something like that. But people just don't want to say anything. So there's this sort of drawn out maybe. And so what I've learned is, you either get to the no quicker and figure out what are those ones to stick in, because there might really be a yes at the end of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. It's very applicable.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I had so many questions actually, but I wanted to ask you in terms of when you look back, and we talked about this before we were recording, how both you and I are more like behind the scenes, people don't really know who we are. Well, at least, people know who you are now, but like in the beginning, right? When you did your consultancy work and this and that, and now you're slowly putting yourself forward. What do you think, like when you look back, like how has that changed? Or, like that journey of when you were behind the scenes, the love of the connections you made, the chefs, the hoteliers, and the industry in itself that you love so much and you wanted to help elevate, to then when you said in 2019, you're like, I'm sitting on a bunch of amazing resources of amazing talents and people who are really shaping where all this is going forward. And then kind of thinking oh, actually, because I'm sitting on all this, I want to put myself out there too, and storytell and share. Right. So I guess my question here is, when you look back on your journey thus far and where you are now, how has all that kind of shaped your community, and where would you like to take On the Pass and all these other projects, we're not going to reveal today, but just ongoing that you have in mind that could expand beyond what you're currently doing, right? Because they're all still within hospitality, they're all still within F&B and spirits. Yeah.
I think I've always been building community. I've always been preaching sort of the art of human connection, and I think, but I was always doing it behind closed doors, so to speak. I wasn't necessarily interested in documenting it for documenting its sake. I was doing it out of a true love and passion for bringing people together. And there's many people who would say, they met their one of their best clients through me at one of my dinners, or they met a boyfriend, or they met a business partner, or things like that. And so now with the podcast, it was never about sort of me becoming more front and center. It was always about really, again, as I said earlier, celebrating the diverse ecosystem that compose of food, beverage, hospitality. But I think, as I was saying earlier too, if you do it with enthusiasm, passion, and integrity, people can't help but ask the question, well, who's this individual that's doing it? And maybe they have an interesting story as well. And I think that's sort of been the byproduct of being quite passionate about this show and passionate about this industry, and really very focused on, I think similar to your show, I'm my show's about the guest. It's not about me. It's really about the guest. There are certain tidbits and undertones where I'm infusing my personality. I'm infusing some of the travels. I'm infusing some of the experiences that I've been on to add more value to the listener. But it's not a promotional vehicle for me. But what it can become is, and I hope it will become, is more of a foundation for other people to tell their stories. So I actually want to bring in other hosts. I don't want to host everything. I'd love to bring in other individuals who see the community that I've built. This incredible community of people that's a mix between industry individuals, chefs, restaurateurs, beverage directors, and just that deeply passionate, like your brother, foodie, someone who will travel the world and get on a plane to go try this new restaurant in Singapore, this new restaurant in Lima, Peru, or something like that. And so I've really sort of cultivated an incredible community, and yeah, I want to continue to do that moving forward, and I can see that extending outside of just a video audio component into real life experiences as well. I've had multiple guests say to me on the podcast, "Hey, let's do a collaboration dinner. Let's do a live recording podcast, but then also do hors d'oeuvres and do drinks. And one of them might be a chef, and one might be the CEO of a spirits company. And we have the hors d'oeuvres from the chef, and we have an incredible cocktail from one of the guests, who's being interviewed. And so there's a lot of interesting ideas and opportunities, and people who are reaching out about how do we extend this into real life?
Experience.
How do we make it more experience based? And how do we bring this top tier talent and this community of industry people and listeners into a space together and create some magic and hopefully, like I said, build more community, connect more people, and have more memorable experiences for us to share together.
That reminds me of I used to, this is a long time ago though, I used to do these supper clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, right? It's bringing community together because, like you said in the very beginning, it's just, it doesn't even have to be super fancy food. It's just food, good conversation, energy. It's just that energy. You just watch people interact
I think
and just like magic
I think
happens.
I think the art of a dinner party composes of a lot of different things, but I think the curation of the guest list needs to be up there at the top. One of the
Mm-hmm.
top things, because I have been at the most stunning location. I have been at that location. There was a world renowned chef, but there was a dryness to some of the people, and there wasn't an exchange of community ideas. There wasn't a really stimulating conversation that was taking place, and so you can have some of the components, but like it's almost the fact that the food, which we all want delicious food, but the food can be less extravagant if the pe- if the
Exactly.
peop if the people are great and the conversation's great and people are vibing, that in and of itself is success. And so for me, anytime I put a dinner party together, or I'm putting an event together for a client, I'm very like, I really want to understand, um, obviously, what are we trying to accomplish, and what does success look like? But then reverse engineering is, how do we get the right people there that are going to hit those goals, but also offer a vibe as well, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
create a space that is worth being at, is
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. We all
Yeah.
have limited time. We're all, if you're coming to one of my things, you're saying no to someone else's, or you're saying no to spending
Mm-hmm.
time with a loved one. So let's make it
Mm-hmm.
as interesting and as impactful as possible. And so whenever I'm thinking about these things, even just for my dinners, I'm like, okay, so and so runs a media company, so and so is a young brand. Okay, that's kind of an interesting connection. This chef can connect with this studio executive who's worked on, on television. That's how my mind is thinking all the time. And it shows in, it's funny, it's almost like I've willed it into existence, because the people will get around the table. Those people that I thought would connect, I don't even have to. I've already made. I created the space for it. I created the platform for them to be able to connect, and then they'll call me up and go, "Man, so and so was really great. I met at your." And I said, yeah. I know. I'm glad you two connected. So it's kind of funny.
Do you do name placements when you set up your
I
table?
have. I have. I don't do it all the time. Again,
Mm-hmm.
some of these are done quickly. Some of them
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
done with proper menus. Some of them are
Yep.
just, let me get 15 people together, and I've got a great
Yep.
chef who's coming to town, and we use bamboo plates, and there's everything from 300 a 300-year-old French porcelain plateware company that has, I've worked with in the past, that has sent over incredible plateware, and dishware, to using sometimes bamboo plates. It's about balance in life,
Yeah. 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 Totally. Totally. Oh yeah, I'm totally feeling it. I because I do the same. When I do mine, I definitely do name placements, and people always like, because I don't know how you do it, but then I usually always ask for RSVP, because I'm like, are you coming?
Of
Right? Because
course.
I want, like, I will print your name out, and I'll put, it's like that's part of my SOP, right? My system.
Yep.
And I think it took me about like a decade for like people around me, my community, to be like, oh yeah, she always does that. She always will have like a name placement for that purpose,
Hmm.
right? Because if I didn't have that, then you're not gonna know. And again, this is culturally, so like I'm in Taiwan,
Hmm.
you're in LA.
Hmm.
Socializing culture is a little bit
Hmm.
different. I'm more
Hmm.
Western educated, but I'm also based here, so
Hmm.
that in itself is a whole navigation
For sure.
system,
For
right? Like,
sure.
how do you get a culture who they socialize, but then when you mix a group of people who come from different backgrounds, how do you play that soft skill of like,
Mm.
oh, so and so, da 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 da, right? So to your point, exactly, I think there's a whole art form to it. um, and that's funny that we're talking about this, because I think in the age of chat GPT and AI and machine learning, that what you're doing, what Curito's doing, that's going to be irreplaceable with ChatGPT, right? You can't you can't replace that on a dinner table,
No,
right? You
well,
can't replace that with the food.
maybe you can. I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other day that said, we'll be, the guest may be AI,
True,
at some point, but
maybe.
I posted something again on LinkedIn. It was another food for thought series that said to people, while you're architecting your digital strategy, your content strategy, and trying to figure out how to leverage the new AI tools at our disposal. I
Mhm.
said, let's not forget to master the art of human connection as well, because
Yeah.
it can be a lost art at some point, and that is very sad, and that's worrisome as well, especially being that we are tribal people, we're community people,
Yeah.
we need each other. If you read Dan Buettner's The Blue Zones, like, community is a big factor. Community is a big factor in our health and wellness and our overall well-being. And
Exactly.
it's said a million times by a million people, but it's like, let's not get it confused with the community you have online versus the actual community you have in real life. And I
Mm.
think there's a power in being together. There's a power in touch. There's a power in all these different things that we need. I feel like to be healthy and to live a vibrant life.
Mm, mm. Okay, I'm gonna, because we're running short on time, so I'm gonna shoot you with some of the notes I took down that I wanted to ask
Sure,
you,
sure,
and then I have my concluding questions that I normally ask everyone.
sure.
So to start off with, I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite dish to make? Like, what are you known for when people, when they're gonna go eat at your place, like, oh, are you gonna make this dish today?
Yeah, I mean,
Your
there's
signature
a lot
dish.
of different things, but I mean, I do. I love making like a homemade chimichurri, and so I would do a grass-fed steak with a homemade chimichurri. I like my chimi a little bit spicier, so I'll make it a
Hmm.
little bit spicier, have a lot of personality. An amazing, kind of light side salad and some garlic mushrooms, and then maybe a little bit of like naan or pita bread with
Mm.
just light olive oil and some sea salt over it. I mean, that's
Homemade.
homemade. Yeah,
Ho-
yeah,
Homemade.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I would also do a paella. I was doing a lot of paella nights, pre-pandemic,
Mm.
during the pandemic as well, because it's one of my favorite it's one of my favorite things to make for sharing amongst like a small group
Yeah.
of people. So I
Yeah.
played with everything you could think of, from seafood paellas to meat paellas to, you know, surf and turf,
Veggie version.
veggie. I've done it all, and that's fun because again, it's a it's a it's a dish that really creates like community as well. We're all sharing off of a
Mhm.
big, almost 20-inch paella pan, and
Yeah.
and exchanging ideas, and it's quite fun.
It's funny. Yours is paella and Jamila's is pies.
Yeah. She's known for her pies for sure.
So, and then a favorite recipe that you learned from your mom.
Mm. There's a lot, but as a kid, it just the first thing that popped into my head was there's like this Italian, sort of crumb cake that she was. It's more, I think, adopted American, but her mother would make it, and so yeah, that's something that I would make with her all the time when I was a kid, and I now enjoy a nice espresso and that with her. It's so fun.
Okay, so when we do IRL in person one day, those are the dishes
Yeah. We're doing
I'm
all of that. We're doing all of that. Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so you had in this whole conversation have repeatedly introduced to us your podcast on the past, and I wanted to ask for those who are new to you and they've never heard your podcast, as one of the top 100 F&B podcasts, how is yours done differently from all the other individuals who talk to chefs and
Yeah.
hoteliers?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think yours brings out, in terms of um, your conversations with these individuals?
I think, I mean, I can only speak for my own. There's a lot of great podcasts out there in the space, but for me, I I'm most interested in like the human stories. Um, I'm less interested in the technicality of exact, there are other podcasts for that, of really diving in 45 minutes into, the
The
technical.
industry, like,
Well, it's like even technically how a chef goes about a certain dish or something like that. It's not that I'm uninterested in that, but in a 45 to an hour format, I'm more interested in what inspires them and why they've made the decisions they've made in their life, and how it's changed their life, and what continues to drive them, and
hmm
how becoming at this level, whether they're a chef or a restaurateur, like what are they doing with that influence and affluence? Like how are they helping shape the
mm-hmm.
future of the
Yeah,
industry? That's what I'm interested in. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm leading it like that. Some people, I've had winemakers on, and I'm sure some people would say, well, I would have loved to know more about X, Y, and Z. Great. That's why I put the links to these individuals. That's why the whole idea is you get a great takeaway and you can dive deeper. I think
Yep.
if you think about what you're kind of sort of asking, what is the competitive edge, or what sort of differentiates? It's really just like it's me. It's what I'm interested in. It's my voice.
hmm
It's my personality. And again, I'm sort of secondary to the guests and to the overall podcast, but I am
Yeah,
driving the ship, so like
of course.
so to
Yeah.
speak. And so the things that I think are interesting, and also I think what most people have told me is, they said, man, it's just like listening to Gabe and a friend chat on the weekend about
hmm
business and life,
Yeah.
and everything. And so I think that resonates with people, and I think it's resonating
Mhm.
with people. Um, and Yeah, and the fact that I'd say maybe the last thing, although I think there's others, is it's quite global. It's not,
Yep.
there's a lot of podcasts that are based in the US that over index on New York, LA, and San Francisco. And
hmm
by the
hmm
way, I say this all the time, not that there's not great stories in those markets, because there are, but being someone who has quite a global lens and works on projects all over the world, I've had a ton of people from Europe and South America and Central America and Australia, New Zealand, and continuing to build that out. And so I'd say 45% of my guests are from outside of the United
hmm
States, because I you know
hmm
this I'm building a global platform. I'm not interested in just building something
Yeah.
that's big in one market.
Yeah. That's really cool because I wanted to ask you, for in the beginning when you started, you said earlier too that you reached out to your friends, right? People you already knew to join, invite them as their guests. And as a host to host here, I wanted to ask you, um, do you now have people reach out to you to want to be a guest? And have you had times where you've had guests on where you're like trying to get that human story side, where
Mhm.
but then the person, and this is kind of a side topic in terms of conversations
Mhm.
with individuals,
Mhm.
right? Because I think with Curito Connects too, it's about the individual, it's about their journey, right? How did they get from the challenges or impactful moments that they've experienced in their life to where they are today and the work they're doing. But sometimes this goes back to what we spoke about very early on about the individual, right? Your
Mhm.
human story, your growth, your understanding of the world. And some people, I think, maybe they haven't really reflected, on their path
Mhm.
to be able to come to the microphone and have this conversation with you,
Mhm.
to say those things,
Mhm.
in a very authentic, non ego, selfless way, right? So I'm just curious from host to host if you've had such experiences with some of your guests.
I mean, I've had lots of experiences where the energy is magic and it's fireworks, and
Yeah,
sometimes it's not, and it falls flat. But that's
yeah,
why for me, I won't get on with anyone that I haven't had a call or two with, or I've had
mm,
video calls with to develop the
yeah,
rapport. Because yeah, now
yeah,
there's a lot more people that I haven't met in person who end up getting on the podcast, but we kind of develop a bit of an understanding of one another. We have a virtual cocktail, so to speak, and
yeah,
for
yeah,
30
yeah.
or 40 minutes and chop it up
Yes.
and learn about each other on a personal level as well. Not just about,
Hmm.
hey, what are we talking about? What do you want to talk about? But like, how are you doing? How's your family? What's,
Yeah, getting to know
what
you.
what are you most excited about right now? And
Hmm.
oftentimes some of it's work related, some of it's like, you know what? Thanks for asking me that. They're like, I'm heading on holiday finally with the family for, to Nantucket or to, to Thailand or to somewhere. And I'm like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
so amazing. So,
Hmm.
just again, developing that connection, I think is so important. But, and I was just telling someone this today, sometimes it's more of the corporate executives that are the ones that are like, I need to know the questions and I need to know this and I kind of need to know that. And my thing is if someone doesn't want to get on the phone beforehand, we don't need to do an episode together. It's no hard feelings at
Yeah,
all. But like I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
also kind of the beauty of the show is that it does feel like it's two friends that are chopping it up, talking about the industry, learning from one
yeah.
another, and discovering from one another as well.
Hmm. 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 I feel the same. So you mentioned earlier these conversations that you have. It's fun because you get to talk to people who are really shaping the industry. So I wanted to ask today, what is trending for us going forward? What do you see that's like the new trend? Whether it's in hospitality, whether it's in gastronomy, whether
Hmm.
it's in spirits, like what? And then obviously we had 3 years of COVID, which really shifted a lot of things too, right? So what do you see that's trending now that the pandemic is kind of over,
Hmm.
and where we're headed?
It's a big question because it really depends on where you sit within the industry. But one thing,
Let's say consumers, like consumers, or from
well,
owners.
I think from a hospitality perspective, I think we're trending in culinary continues to be, from what I believe, one of the largest drivers of tourism. Like, I think lists like James Beard for the United States, world's 50 best, for globally, but then also regionally. This information that used to be held in the hands of a small few has been democratized. You can now, whether through its world's 50 best or world's 50 best discovery, type in, I want to go to Panama City, and guess what? Like, there's all this information that's there now, and you kind of have a trusted resource where, again, 15, 20 years ago, you didn't really have that information at all. And so I think culinary continues to be one of the largest drivers. You've got massive hospitality groups like Four Seasons touting the amount of Michelin stars that they have within their portfolio of restaurants. Rosewood Group as well, really over indexing on highlighting some of the incredible chefs and culinary offerings. I also think like eco luxury, eco tourism. I think that's something that there's a big demand. It's quite niche, but you have a very affluent clientele base that kind of can afford anything, but they'd rather be in a really groovy treehouse, with an amazing view and releasing turtles on the beach. Like in the morning at 6 a.m. Obviously I'm making this up, although I did do this in Mexico a few months
You're
ago.
you're not making that up.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah,
It's a
no,
thing.
I was gonna say I did do that at my friend's. My friend David Leventhal has an amazing eco luxury resort called Playa Viva. But like, yeah, I mean, there are individuals that could easily afford to go to certain places, but are opting on this more, I think, cultural tourism as well. Like really having a curiosity and an understanding for a region, for its people, for its ingredients, and understanding its cuisine. So I think that will continue to be a trend. And there's a lot of other things, but that's for the next podcast that we can we can talk about.
Happy to have that conversation. We'll bring Jamila in
Yeah,
too,
for
and we
sure.
can all have sit around table and have this conversation. Okay, so my last three questions, which usually I ask all my guests. Do you want me to shoot all three at you at once, or I ask one and have you answer one? How would
However
you?
you want to do it. Yeah, however you want to do it.
However,
Yeah.
half the time I just say all three, and then people go, "Wait, can you remind me again what you just asked?" Okay, so I'll do it one by one. So first one is, what keeps you grounded?
What keeps me grounded is, I think, my family. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have an amazing, incredible support system in my family, and also just kind of doing the personal work and the awareness of understanding myself, and also realizing that uh, life is beautiful, and we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously half the time, and just appreciate uh, what we have, and just the great things that are happening. I've been able to travel to a lot of places and realize how fortunate I am and how blessed I am to have been born into the family that I was born into, in the area that I was, that I was. And I know a lot of that, because there's a lot of data, dictates ultimately your trajectory in life. So I'm always grounded in appreciation, and just feeling blessed that I have the family that I have, and I love life. So even the good and the bad times, the good times are great, and the bad times are not that bad. I have to remind myself.
It's all
Yeah,
perspective, isn't it?
yeah,
But when you say doing the awareness work,
yeah.
like what kind of stuff do you do to help you
Yeah, I mean,
be
I
more
do I
aware?
do a lot of yoga.
Hmm.
I have sort of a daily yoga practice, a meditation practice, and also just like I think pre-pandemic I spent a lot of time really focused on the outward and not focused on sort of the inward. And so there's deep introspection that takes place when you're in meditation or when you're in yoga, and understanding and sitting with those thoughts and understanding those fears and anxieties and those insecurities, and just addressing them, or just letting them pass through. But if they come back up again, trying to understand where that comes from, where that stems from,
Mm.
and also, again, doing the work is realizing that there are things within your childhood that you bring with you into friendships, into relationships, good and bad.
Mhm.
There's great things from my childhood. There's other things that I've had to work on. And so I think for me, the biggest thing is, like, some people aren't even aware of these things. So, like, that's why I say the awareness, doing the work and actually just being aware. The change
Yep.
doesn't happen right away, but when you have that awareness, you're triggering that ability to actually become a, a different self, and the
Yes.
possibility of a different self.
Right. Right. Okay. So the next question is, what resources I guess because we're talking about awareness, right? So like what resources has helped you along the way of your awareness and self-development, or not even just the things you like, right? So
Yeah.
the whole industry, everything we've talked about in the last hour, that you would recommend to listeners who are listening to this episode. So whether it's like books
Yeah.
or obviously your podcast or maybe other podcast hosts
Yeah.
that you like.
I have two books that are not
Great.
hospitality related, but I think
Okay.
are related to building better relationships, which I think we all need to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book called The Brain on Love, the neurobiology of, I think, healthy connections, and it's by Dr. Stan Tatkin. Fascinating book that is not just about love relationships, but about friendship relationships, relationships with your parents. It really dives into, and it's an amazing audiobook. It dives into attachment theory. It dives into a whole slew of
Mm.
things that help you better understand yourself, but also better understand the people around you. So that's one that I would
Okay.
highly recommend. The other one
Uh-huh.
is, I'm sure listeners are familiar with Ryan Holiday, who really,
Oh, I love Ryan
yeah,
Holiday.
yeah, he's sort of distilling down stoicism. But there's a book called, oh, what's it called? Hold on now. It's called,
Is it one of his classics, the first three, like
no, no.
Obstacles
The
Away
obstacle is
or
the
what?
way. The obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
The timeless art of turning trials into triumphs. That is, I will tell you, whether you're going through a tough time, you're about to go into a tough time, you're coming out of a tough time, I highly recommend that book because it does put things into, again, like you said, it's all perspective. It's all perspective at
Mhm.
the end of the day. And there's great examples of individuals, some of the most interesting and important individuals in the world, who, you know, took really difficult situations and turned them into just the most incredible opportunities. And you know, I
Okay.
love that. I always tell people this now. I think it's the Benjamin Franklin quote: "The things that hurt instruct." So let's also
Mm.
remember that, when we are hurting and we are struggling, there's a lot of learning that can come from that.
Mhm. Oh, that's great. Okay, last one.
I love how I'm sitting in the dark. By the way, I
I know. I actually was gonna make a comment about that, not because we're not recording video, so people can't see. But we
yeah,
went from sunny
yeah,
California,
yeah,
like
yeah.
afternoon sunshine
Yeah,
in your
I
room, to
forgot to
like
put the light on, but it's okay.
they're completely dark
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is fine because we're concluding here with our last question, which is, to those who are listening to this episode, what 2 cent would you give to them, like, those who like resonate with your story or who are big fans of your podcast? What 2 cent would you give to them? Or another way to reverse this question would be like, what would you tell your younger self what you know now, right? Like words of encouragement.
Mm. I mean, there's a lot of different things kind of going through my mind, but I mean, I guess the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is I've had quite the health journey, and, um, unless you've had your health sort of stripped away, you don't necessarily. I don't think everyone appreciates it. So what I would say to people is, really, we're talking about part of doing that work on the self. Part of that awareness is also hopefully understanding, and learning about your health and wellness, and that we live in a time where, the food system is broken. We've been marketed to, I mean, at an extraordinary level, and which has turned into habits. It's the whole concept of breakfast is the most important meal of the day is a marketing campaign that came from cereal companies. Um, I think, I forget. I think that was in, forget what his book is. The Omnivore's Dilemma.
Michael
Michael
Pollan.
Pollan. But like, really assess how you, and your family and your community interact with food, and what what you're putting in your body, I think really matters. We all know these things, but I think few of us, because of the busy lifestyles that we have, because of lack of time, because of convenience, we tend to take the easier, uh, you know, the easier option. And type 2 diabetes, obesity. There's just, it is rampant, not just in my country, but in a lot of parts of the developing world. And unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
the United States has brought its manufactured food through the form of fast food chains to a lot of other parts of the world. And so, really check in with yourself, understand your body, reconnect with your body, listen to your body. It's telling you things. I think that is something that I want everyone to think about and be conscious of.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to end our conversation today. It's very important.
It is. It is.
Well, I want to thank you again for your time and for sharing your journey and your story, and very exciting things you're doing going forward. And we hope to have you out in Asia, in Taiwan at some point. I don't know if there was anything else you would like to add to the conversation before we say farewell here.
No, I mean, I just want to thank you for your time and for, the energy and your enthusiasm for the industry, and having people like myself, um, who are not well known in the industry, but trying to do great things, and trying to, to help people and spread a message. And so, yeah, I thank you for making the space for this.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Well, I will say farewell for now, and then I will put all your resources in the episode resources link below so people can connect with
Amazing.
you, whether it's for consultancy work
Yeah.
or chefs in Asia who want to join and
Please,
be on
please.
the
Yeah,
path,
yeah, you can you
So,
can I think you have my personal website, you have the On the Pass website. So,
yeah, I have
yeah,
everything. So
please,
I'm going to
please.
put it all in the
Perfect.
resources link. Yeah.
Perfect. No,
All
I
right.
need more chefs in Asia as well. So let's put that in there, because there's so many incredible talents that I would love to have on my podcast as well.
Yeah. On the Pass Season 5 Asia Tour.
Yeah, I think so. There we
Oh,
go.
look at that.
Maybe we co-host that one together.
My pleasure. Let
Yeah,
me know.
yeah. All right. Ciao. Thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much.
you.
Ciao,
Ciao.
ciao. Bye.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.